Hello! Today we are going to have a play in the PMDG 737-700 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We are at Edwards Air Force Base and we're just going to go and do a quick circuit of the airfield just to see how the basic autopilot modes work. This is without a flight plan, so we're just going to go and fly the aeroplane. Okay, so the airplane is ready to go. So to do this, to get it ready to go in a hurry, I went into the PMDG setup menu, did a panel load state, and then loaded the runway state. There are 3 pages of states you can choose. So I've chosen the runway state, which gets the aircraft ready to fly pretty much immediately. So the one thing we are going to do before we get started, I'm going to start on runway 23, so I'm going to go for 230 degrees on the heading. If we go and look at a little nav map just to prove this to you, so or 226 degrees we need look for the runway direction. So let's go back in the simulator. So we'll change our heading on the master control panel of the autopilot to 226 degrees. All good. We'll go and change our climb out speed. We'll use the auto throttle just to have a play with it, see how it works. So we set the auto throttle to 200 knots. We're going to say heading select mode before... we can't. Flight directors aren't on. Okay, can we do it now? Is it going to let us? Yes, it is. Excellent. So we are going to go and have a fly. And we're not going to program a flight plan, and we're going to see what happens to us along the way. So I've just corrected the barometric pressure for the altimeter as well, so you can see we're at about 2,300 feet, so when we come in we need to be at least 5,000 feet on the way into the feathers. Okay, so we'll do that now. We'll go and set our altitude for the climb out to 5,000 feet, which is good, and we'll use a flight level change to get there. So rather than using speed mode, we'll just arm the auto throttle, although I'm going to turn it off for the moment. So we can taxi out basically. Flaps are already at 5 degrees. So have we got rid of the wheel chocks? Yes, we have. Let's get on our way. And we're rolling. So I'm going to turn right. I'm just going to taxi out to the runway. Oh, we're getting sunblind from the view out the window. It's very bright, isn't it? Have a look outside. This plane does look spectacular, doesn't it? It's Edwards Air Force Base. There's live weather, live time. Apparently this is as it is right now. So we're going to take off on the closer runway and then do a quick circuit of the airfield and come back on the opposite, on the the longer runway which has ILS, just so we can have a play with ILS on the way in. Okay, so we're just taxiing out. I have to say PMDG have done an amazing job with this. It absolutely looks the part, doesn't it? You can see the suspension moving around. You can see if you look closely, the wings wobbling when you go over bumps, although this is very flat around here. And the tail wobbles as well. So here we go, here comes the runway. I think we have to go all the way out to the runway. We can't really cut the corner, but I'm going to break the rules and cut the corner. It's an enormously long runway here. It's not like we're struggling for space. Okay, let's straighten the screen up. Remember, we have no flight plan, so we're just going to use selected heading and altitude and the basic controls on the master control panel for the autopilot to do this flight. We just want to see how the plane behaves, really. Okay, full throttle. So I'm not using toga mode either, we're just going use the throttles. Notice you can actually push the throttles beyond 100%.
80 knots.
I'm going to pull them back just a little bit. And rotate. Because the crosswind is really pushing us. Okay,
Positive rate of climb.
gear up. Flaps up. Auto throttle on. And autopilot on. Is it going to let us? Now, is this because we don't have a route? Or no, we're too low. The autopilot doesn't come on below a certain altitude above the ground. This is all good lessons to be learning. So we're doing a flight level change, aren't we? Yeah, level change to 5,000 feet. So the aircraft's climbing out 200 knots to get to 5,000 feet, and it's managing speed and climb rate to get there based on the configuration, which is good. So it's not obviously levelling out and lessening the throttle so we don't accelerate beyond 200 knots. But we're going to tell it to do exactly that in a moment. Okay, so we're now flying along quite happily at quite a high level of alpha because we're only doing 200 knots. And let's get it to swap headings. So rather than go 226 degrees now, if we have a look at the map, we want to go 46 degrees. So we're flying up and we're being pushed a little bit by the wind, but we're not going to worry too much about that. So we're going to spin the heading round to 46. There we go. In the Boeing you can control the rate of turn. There's a bank angle underneath the heading knob and it goes from 10 degrees to 30 degrees. So you can make as steep or as gentle a turn as you want. We're obviously doing an incredibly steep turn. We're just holding 200 knots, so let's speed that up a bit. Let's let it increase out to 250, which is what we're allowed to do underneath 10,000 feet. Notice we're getting a caution about that, that's fine. This is very much a test flight just to see how the plane behaves. So it's coming up for... is it doing it? Altitude hold at 5,000, is it going to do it? I think the plane has kind of lost its mind a little bit. It's not holding the 5,000 feet very well. Yeah, I think I'm just throwing instructions at it too quickly. We are kind of throwing it around. But this is a good way to learn, to find out, you know, what it can keep up with. And if you're in a sudden situation, you know, navigating around an airport or something, we're given sudden instructions for vectors from air traffic control. It's good to know what you can get away with and what you can't. So that's why this kind of flight comes in really useful, to put an aeroplane through its paces, and more or less, you know, more than that, put the systems through their paces. Okay, so we're doing downwind leg, back past the airfield. How are we doing on the controls? So flaps are up. Speed brake is in. We're at 5,000. It's gone for 5,000 feet. It's not going for 5,500. That's a bit odd. So let's go for vertical speed and make it climb up to the height we thought we wanted to be at. So we'll go at 1,000 feet a minute, please, to get to 5,500. So it should do it fairly smartly. How are we doing in sight in terms of the airfield? There's the airfield behind us. Turn back round. Coming up to 5,500 feet. It's interesting that it wasn't holding 5,000 feet very easily. Okay, it seems to be behaving itself now. Okay. So there's this little bluff here, which is a good turning point usually to come back into the ILS. So we're going to fly over this ridge and then make our turn back towards the runway. So we're going to come in runway 23 left. So to do that, we're going to first of all come back to 220 knots. And to help the aircraft do that, we'll throw out the air brakes, and you'll see down here the rate of change. So the end of the green arrow shows you the speed you'll be doing in about 6 seconds, I think it is. So I'll come off the air brakes now, let it coast the rest of the way down, and we're going to turn round to 226 degrees. We're also going to change the nav radio to 110.10. So let's do that first. So 110.10. We make that the active frequency, and we can change the display here to show VOR mode. We can change the course as well to match our runway direction, which is 226 degrees. So we want to change this. We'll go that way around. Just going to roll it and roll it and roll it till we get to 226. And let's go and turn the heading as well now to 226 degrees. So the aircraft is turning to meet the same direction as the runway. Okay, so you've got a normal course deviation indicator here. That's because we have this in VOR mode. We can switch to approach mode as well, and that gets you the vertical position relative to the glide slope at the same time. So you can see up here we're making the turn and coming back in. So let's go and tighten this turn a bit by getting the speed down now to 180. We'll start pulling the flaps out. So we've just overshot the centre line. Not a major concern. Let's go for approach mode and see how it deals with it. So as we approach the glide slope, which you can see both on this display and on here, you can see we're slightly below the glide slope and slightly to the right of the glide slope. So we're going to go and put some more flaps out now. The auto throttle is dealing with getting us to 180 knots. So the flaps are travelling, you can see that happening over here, and you can see the overspeed limit for the flaps in their current configuration. So let's come back down now to 170 knots. Go for the next level of flaps, which is going to be 15. You can see directly out in front of us is the runway, so we'll get the gear down now. Lights on. Does this model have the head-up display? No, it doesn't. Oh, that's a shame. Some of the models of the 737 have got a head-up display that you can drop down from the roof. So it's saying it's a single channel ILS, so that means we can't use auto land on it. You need dual channel to do that. Unless we can influence that by tuning this one in as well. 110.10. It's really helpful that you can't see the frequency while you're doing it. And switch that over. So both nav radios are tuned in. Course is matching. So is this descending on the glide slope? Yes, it is. So it's caught the glide slope and it's descending. So fully automatic on the autopilot, and it's coming in. So we're in glide slope mode, VOR lock. So everything's working nicely. Very good. So we're going to get the speed down now. Start reducing or decreasing the flaps even further. So we'll go to 150 knots. Go to the next stage of flaps. So you can see the speed limit for the configuration lowered. Became closer to the speed we're at. So let's go even further. Go for maximum flaps. See what happens. So the flaps are now going to 40 degrees. So now I've noticed this before. Let's have a really close look at this diagram of Edwards. It's almost, yeah, the ILS look is off to one side of the runway. So what we're going to do, now we're flying in, just to make this even more fun, we're going to fly by hand. So we go and turn the autopilot off, we turn the auto throttle off, we hit the button here to shut up that alarm, center the view up, and we are in control. So we're going to ignore the ILS to an extent. We're going to use the glide slope, but we're going to fly the centerline ourselves. So we've gone below the glide slope. So let's just lift that back up. We've gone slightly to the right.
Glide slope.
Yes, I know. We're just coming back towards it.
Glide slope.
It's very insistent, isn't he?
Glide slope.
There we go.
500. Glide slope.
The project's going a bit slow, so it's giving us quite a high alpha. So let's just go another 10 knots faster. And look at that, look at the climb rate you get from the flaps. It's quite interesting to see, isn't it? So it has a happy place at about 135 knots then. But again, this all comes from experience, doesn't it? With the aircraft. We're a little bit high. So we can drift back down towards
200.
the runway.
$100. 50. 30. 20. 10.
And we're down. Without too much drama. Okay, so flaps back up. It's quite a long roll to the taxiway here. So I'm quite impressed. Obviously it takes a bit of practice with different aircraft to realise what the natural approach speed is at a given configuration and weight. But about 135 knots, but it's still quite heavy, remember, because I haven't actually flown anywhere. Just done a circuit with half a tank probably of fuel. There you come off the runway and we can taxi back. So that was an interesting one. So without a flight plan, we just used the selected modes for heading and speed, and we used flight level change, how to play with approach mode, and then went fully manual for landing. And yeah, good fun. Obviously the more time you spend in an aircraft, the more comfortable you get with operating it. But I think for the moment, I'm quite pleased with that. That's the PMDG 737-700. At some point in the next few weeks I'll do a full flight between 2 international airports and record it, so you get to see the whole thing. Okay, but for the moment I'm going to end it there.